Welcome to the City of Conroe and Texas Department of Transportation Houston District's virtual public meeting for the proposed Old Conroe Road widening and extension project with limits from Loop 336 to Farm to Market 1488. The project is a city project being conducted in cooperation with TxDOT. This is a pre-recorded presentation. My name is Dasi Marin, representing the project team, and I would like to welcome you and thank you for participating in this virtual public meeting. I am part of the consultant team working on this project on behalf of the City of Conroe. This is the first public meeting being conducted for the proposed Old Conroe Road widening and extension project. This presentation is available for viewing starting on April 20th, 2021. During the virtual meeting, you may pause the presentation and navigate forward or backward using your video player. This virtual public meeting is being held to introduce the proposed project and gather public input. You are encouraged to submit comments on the proposed project after reviewing the meeting materials and listening to this presentation. From this point forward in the presentation, the project will be referred to verbally as the Old Conroe Road project. In this presentation, I will describe the proposed Old Conroe Road project, provide an overview of the environmental studies being performed, explain the next steps in the project development process, and outline the methods for submitting comments. Given the unique circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, along with the department's commitment to protecting public health during this national emergency, the City of Conroe and TxDOT are conducting this virtual public meeting to avoid in-person contact. At this time, an online public meeting is being conducted in lieu of an in-person public meeting. This presentation covers the same information that the Houston District would have presented at an in-person public meeting. The comment process for the virtual public meeting will be described near the end of this presentation. All public meeting materials can be found on the City of Conroe project webpage on the Old Conroe Road meeting notice page. The web page for the project can be found at www.cityofconroe.org. Elected official letters were mailed and emailed on March 30th, 2021. Notices for this public meeting were published in La Voz on April 4th, 2021, the Houston Chronicle on April 5th, 2021, and the Conroe Courier on April 5th, 2021. Notices were mailed directly to adjacent property owners on April 5th, 2021. Information was posted to the City of Conroe website on April 20th, 2021. The Old Conroe Road project is receiving federal funds, and because of the federal component, TxDOT is required to assess the potential environmental effects of the proposed project in accordance with federal standards. The process that is followed is called the National Environmental Policy Act process, otherwise known as NEPA. The NEPA process provides analyses of the potential impacts to the natural and man-made environment and helps the decision maker to make an informed decision on whether or not to proceed with the project. On December 9, 2019, TxDOT received a signed Memorandum of Understanding from the Federal Highway Administration that permits TxDOT to assume responsibility from the Federal Highway Administration for reviewing and approving certain assigned NEPA projects. This review and approval process applies to this project. The Old Conroe Road project extends along Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard between Loop 336 and the West Fork San Jacinto River and along Old Conroe Road between Park Avenue and FM 1488 in Montgomery County, Texas. The project would extend through undeveloped land and over the West Fork San Jacinto River and Lake Creek between these two roadways. Upon project completion, Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard and Old Conroe Road would become the same roadway. The total project length is 5.7 miles. The existing roads are two-lane undivided roadways with intermittent turn lanes. Land use in the general area is primarily residential with limited commercial and high-density residential near FM 1488. In the vicinity of West Fork, San Jacinto River, and Lake Creek, land is predominantly wooded and undeveloped. A bridge on Old Conroe Road, shown here in the 1940 aerial photograph, originally crossed both the West Fork, San Jacinto River, and Lake Creek before 1952. You can see in the 1952 aerial photograph, the next available aerial, that the bridge was no longer standing. The bridge was washed out in a flood during this time period. Remains of the original bridge still exist in their old location within and along the river. The city of Conroe saw the need to reestablish the connection for area connectivity and mobility and submitted an application to Houston-Galveston Area Council in January of 2015 during the Transportation Improvements Program call for projects. The old Conroe Road project was the largest off-system project ever selected for funding. The project is currently scheduled for construction in 2024. Since the proposed project's initiation, preliminary assessments of potential environmental impacts of the project have been conducted in order to identify environmental constraints. These constraints are shown on the environmental constraints map as part of the virtual public meeting materials found on this website. Resources and issues reviewed included community impacts, hazardous materials, biological resources, waters of the U.S., including wetlands, and cultural resources. Several alternative routes were considered for the new location bridge crossing of West Fork, San Jacinto River, and Lake Creek. After evaluating the impacts of those routes, it was determined that the proposed alternative would have the least engineering constraints and environmental impacts. The following are needs for the old Conroe Road project. There is limited mobility within the project corridor. The facility consists of one lane in each direction with limited turning lanes. There is a lack of a river crossing in the area, with the nearest being several miles upstream and downstream of the project, resulting in limiting north-south travel. The area is experiencing a high growth rate with multiple residential developments being started or planned along the project corridor. Current and projected growth in the area has caused traffic congestion to increase, which will continue under a no-build configuration. Lastly, the lack of a direct route across West Fork, San Jacinto River, and Lake Creek limits access to hospitals and emergency responders, affecting response time. A bridge along Old Conroe Road would address this need, along with the additional lanes allowing emergency responders to move around vehicles and reach their destinations more quickly. The purpose of the proposed project is to improve regional mobility and connectivity, reduce congestion, and improve emergency response times by providing a new 4-lane bridge over the West Fork, San Jacinto River, and Lake Creek, creating an alternative north-south connection between Loop 336 South and FM 1488, while widening the existing facilities of Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard and Old Conroe Road from 2 to 4 lanes. Reviewing the projected average daily traffic volumes and travel times along Old Conroe Road, we will start at the year 2025. Traffic volumes on Old Conroe Road are projected to grow to 8,417 vehicles per day, a 16% increase from 2020. Without roadway improvements, the current capacity of Old Conroe Road would not be adequate to accommodate traffic volume increases in 2045. The projected 2045 average daily traffic is 27,162 vehicles per day. Despite the threefold increase in traffic over this 20-year period, the proposed roadway improvements would result in an average time savings of 30 minutes faster than the existing travel time from the beginning to the end of this project as a result of the added capacity and bridge connection over the West Fork and San Jacinto River. As mentioned earlier, one of the needs for the project is based on a lack of options in the area for traveling across the West Fork San Jacinto River. Currently, the nearest crossings are approximately 5 miles from Old Conroe Road, limiting mobility in the area. For example, if a motorist wanted to travel to Loop 336 South near Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard, they would travel a west route, which would be a 19-mile route, or they could travel an east route, which would be an 11-mile route. However, with construction of the proposed project, that distance is reduced to just over 5 miles, resulting in an average travel time savings of approximately 30 minutes along the route. The proposed project would widen Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard South between Loop 336 South and the West Fork San Jacinto River, and widen and extend Old Conroe Road between the West Fork San Jacinto River and FM 1488 from 2 to 4 lanes. The proposed project would also construct a new bridge across the West Fork San Jacinto River and Lake Creek spanning 1 mile. At least 7 stormwater detention ponds would be constructed as needed for the project. The proposed roadway would contain 2 12-foot wide travel lanes in each direction, a variable width flush and raised median, a 10-foot wide shared use path on the east side of the roadway, and intermittent 6-foot wide sidewalks. Now we will discuss the existing typical sections along the proposed project alignment, with Old Conroe Road represented in green and Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard represented in orange. The existing Sergeant Ed Holcomb Boulevard is typically a 2-lane undivided roadway with a drainage ditch on each side. The existing right-of-way width varies from 50 to 100 feet. There are no sidewalks or bike lanes along the roadway. Although what are shown are called typical sections, it should be noted that in some sections of the roadway, the shoulder and ditch typical sections may vary. The existing Old Conroe Road is typically a 2-lane undivided roadway with a drainage ditch on each side with intermittent turn lanes. The existing right-of-way width varies from 60 to 80 feet. There are no sidewalks or bike lanes along the roadway. The proposed roadway, once constructed, would generally have 4 different typical sections. The locations of each of the 4 typical sections are shown on this map of the project alignment. We will now show and describe each of these typical sections 1 through 4. Typical section 1 would extend from Loop 336 to the bridge, from the south end of the bridge to Park Avenue, and from the power line easement to the edge of the Foster's Ridge subdivision. Typical section 1 would have 2 12-foot wide travel lanes in each direction, separated by a 16-foot wide raised grassy median. Drainage would be via storm sewers, in other words, curb and gutter, and drainage ditches on both sides of the road. A 10-foot wide shared use path would be constructed along the east side, while an intermittent 6-foot wide sidewalk would be constructed along the west side. Sidewalks would be placed as a supplemental to developed areas that have a need for them. The right-of-way width in the roadway segments with this typical section would be 120 feet. Typical section 2 would be for the proposed approximately 1 mile long bridge across the West Fork San Jacinto River and Lake Creek. Typical section 2 for the proposed bridge section would have 2 12-foot wide travel lanes in each direction and 10-foot wide shoulders separated by a concrete barrier. The shared use path on the east side of the new bridge would be 14 feet wide. Pedestrians would cross the bridge using the shared use path. The right-of-way width in this bridge section would be 100 feet. Typical section 3 would be through the large lot residential areas. Typical section 3 would have 2 12-foot wide travel lanes in each direction, separated by a 14-foot flush continuous turn lane median. Drainage would be via storm sewers, in other words, curb and gutter, and drainage ditches on both sides of the road. A 10-foot wide shared use path would be constructed along the east side. The right-of-way width in the roadway segments with this typical section would be 90 to 100 feet. Typical section 4 would apply only in the southernmost commercial portion of the project, from just south of Saddlebrook Drive to FM 1488, where the existing right-of-way is very constrained by the adjacent land uses. Typical section 4 would have 2 12-foot wide travel lanes in each direction, divided by a 4-foot wide raised concrete median. The 10-foot wide shared use path would be located along the east side of the road, and a 6-foot wide sidewalk would be on the west side. Drainage would be via storm sewers with no drainage ditches. The right-of-way width in this segment would vary between 80 and 90 feet. Approximately 80 acres of additional right-of-way would be required for the proposed bridge. The project was designed to require the least amount of additional right-of-way possible, yet still meet federal and state requirements. No residential or commercial displacements are anticipated. The proposed project is consistent with the Houston-Galveston Area Council's 2045 Regional Transportation Plan for the 8-county Houston-Galveston region and the 2019 to 2022 Transportation Improvement Program. The proposed project would be funded with a combination of federal and local funds for a total of approximately $120 million. The project team is in the process of identifying and evaluating potential environmental impacts that could occur as a result of constructing the proposed improvements. Areas being reviewed include cultural and natural resources, community impacts, environmental justice, and hazardous material. A traffic noise analysis will be conducted in accordance with state and federal guidelines to determine if the project would result in a traffic noise impact. If there is a traffic noise impact, noise barriers would be analyzed to determine if they are reasonable and feasible. If noise barriers are proposed for the project, a noise workshop would be held for property owners adjacent to any proposed noise barriers. The project would be designed to avoid or minimize impacts to the greatest amount practicable. Technical reports documenting the analysis and conclusions of these studies will be available for review once completed. We want to highlight the estimated project timeline. Look for the pink "We Are Here" arrow at the bottom left of the slide. This virtual public meeting is being held to present the proposed project and gather public and stakeholder input. After the comment period closes, the City of Conroe will review the comments received and prepare a virtual public meeting summary report. The summary report will be posted to the project website approximately 3 months after the close of the comment period. The next steps include refining the schematic for the proposed alternative, further evaluating environmental impacts, and presenting the refined proposed alternative at a future public involvement event. Provided the environmental documents and process are approved, the project would then move into detailed design and right-of-way acquisition could begin. As stated earlier, construction is programmed to begin in 2024. The project team anticipates that construction would take approximately 2.5 years. The project website contains all materials presented in this virtual public meeting, including this presentation in both English and Spanish, exhibit boards, a comment card, a project fact sheet, schematic layout for the proposed build alternative, and the environmental constraints map. The schematic layout provides a more in-depth look at details such as existing and proposed right-of-way, shared use path, sidewalks, bridge, and medians. These files are large and may require more time to download than the other project materials. The City of Conroe and TxDOT encourage you to review the materials posted on the virtual public meeting website and to provide written comments. The comment form is located on the meeting website. Comments must be received by email or mailed and postmarked by May 5th, 2021 to be included in the official virtual public meeting summary report. You can submit written comments in the following ways: by email to oldconroe@lja.com, by mail to the City of Conroe's project design consultant, Michael Keck, at 480 Wildwood Forest Drive, Suite 250, Spring, Texas, 77380. Please remember to reference the project CSJ number 0912-37-231. Online by visiting www.cityofconroe.org and searching in the upper right-hand search box for Old Conroe Road. Click on the email link at the bottom of the project page to open the comment form. Again, responses to comments received during the comment period will be included in the virtual public meeting summary report that will be posted on the project website approximately 3 months after the close of the comment period. The project website is www.cityofconroe.org. Keyword search Old Conroe Road. Secondly, don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. Please feel free to contact Benjamin Burns at the TxDOT Houston District Office at 713-802-5092 or Michael Keck, Design Consultant for the City of Conroe at 713-953-5093 with any questions or comments. You can also keep up with the City of Conroe news on our Facebook page. Thank you for participating in this virtual public meeting.